the last time we were in Polish convention was in Łódź.
In Łódź, yeah.
In Łódź, yes. Okay, so does anything change in the RPG world since that time? In general, or in Polish, maybe you see the difference?
In general, yes. The emergence of Kickstarter has changed role-playing games. Kickstarter is the future of role-playing games for so many different reasons. Before Kickstarter, I would have to guess how many books I want to print. And it's a guess. It really is. Sometimes it's an educated guess. You know, sometimes I have an idea, but it's still, I hope this will work. With Kickstarter, I know exactly how many books to print. They're paid for. They're already paid for. If I structure it right, I am guaranteed to make money. And other people are guaranteed to be happy. Because they get feedback from me, they get to look at things, and it is the way, and most importantly, it allows small publishers like me to have production values like Wizards of the Coast and Paizo. So I can make a full color book. I can make a hardbound full color book that's completely paid for, and make a little bit of profit for myself, and maybe set up another one shortly thereafter that, again, I don't have to guess, and it makes everything so much easier. And if it doesn't kick, if the money doesn't go through, I know nobody wants it. So that's important to know before you dump a couple $1,000 into it.
Okay, that's important. So you think it's the future of games?
I think it's the future of games.
So no, not a temporary trend.
No. It's the way that games are going to be made in the future. And I'm very bad at predicting the future. I've been wrong a lot, but I'm not really the one who's saying that. The ones who are saying that are the people who have done it and have, all the success stories are there. You can go and look at them. I do know that a lot of people, I've been told by a lot of people here in Poland that they don't trust PayPal, that they don't, and they're very suspicious of internet sales. And I understand that. I am suspicious of internet sales. So, but I think what needs to happen is for Poland to have its own Kickstarter and see that it works and see how it works and be successful. And I think if that happens, then a lot of small publishers in Poland will be able to do what I did, and we'll be able to see a lot more role-playing games in Polish. And I think that would be really, really neat. Because you could have a lot of small press Polish publishers. And that would be great, because the more games, the better. And I think that would be really neat.
Actually, I was supposed to ask you later on about Kickstarter, because you have your own new project.
I have my own Kickstarter going.
Wicked Fantasy? Yes. And
Wicked Fantasy is me and a few friends, Jill Fraser and Jess Heinig, reinventing the classic, cliche, boring fantasy races. And we started with 5. We did humans and gnomes and dwarves and elves and halflings, the classic player character races. And then we added 5 more, which are not classic player character races. And we did orcs and gnolls and goblins, which are one of my favorites, and ratmen and kobolds. And we added those as player character races. And those were really fun because it was almost like having a blank slate. Because what kind of culture do gnolls have? They really don't.
Good point.
Games Workshop did some stuff with goblins, but they're still pretty much a joke. They're a funny joke, but they're still a joke. And orcs are just, bloodthirsty guys. So we really got to take a look at, what is the original gnoll? What is the original kobold? And go back to that and then kind of reinterpret that in a way that players would find fun. And that's been a lot of fun to do. And that's what Wicked Fantasy is. It's all 10 of those races.
And where does the inspiration come from?
The inspiration really comes from friends of mine that I know want to play that race. So, for example, a friend of mine really wants to play dwarves. He only plays dwarves. If there's a game that doesn't have dwarves, he'll play a dwarf, right? So I said, I have to make sure that this dwarf, once he sees it, he will never play another one. He'll want to play this dwarf. And the way that I did it is that I know the things about dwarves he likes. I made them unstoppable. I made them highly resistant to pain. They don't sleep. They don't eat. They don't they drink beer. And once they start walking, they don't stop. They're just unstoppable. And he looked at that and went, this is the dwarf I've always wanted to play. And I went, I win. That's what I wanted. And another example is my wife Ro, for goblins, we're making the goblin wife. And that's a character class, the goblin wife. And she has a whole bunch of abilities that my wife wants. Like, she can throw things and hit people with them in the middle of the fight. It doesn't matter if you're standing behind 15 people. She'll pick up the plate and throw it and hit you in the head, you know. And she can yell at people, and that's what her magic power is that she yells at people and and causes magical abilities. So paladins get blessings, and wizards get spells, and the goblin wife gets scoldings. And I don't know what the Polish word for this is. It's when mom tells you that you've done bad.
Okay.
Right? It's when you freeze up because your mom is saying your full name. You know, Johnem Wick. You know, and she uses that voice. And suddenly you're like, and you have no, and so that's what one of the things the goblin wife gets. And I showed that to her after we were done with it, and she said, I want to play this. And the reason I did that is because every gaming group is the same, right? My friend who wants to play dwarves, there's a guy just like that in your gaming group, right? You know there's a guy he always plays dwarves. And if I make my friend happy, I'm probably going to make your friend happy. And the goblin wife character, there's going to be someone in your group, and you know who that is, don't you? And that was the whole thing. It's like, if I can make this really personal for this friend of mine, someone else is going to read that and feel that. They're going to feel that. And that's what, we've done with Wicked Fantasy, is taken each of the races and said, the player who plays this race, what do they want? The elves want to be tragic. Okay, let's make them tragic. Let's make them so tragic that they're going to be crying all the way, and all that. And we did something with the orcs where we had the orcs eat their gods. So, because the gods made orcs to be evil and said, go out and do evil and eat your enemies and you'll gain their strength. And the orcs said, well, the gods are really powerful, so if we eat them... And so they eat their gods, because the orcs eat their gods. And what orc player isn't going to like that, right? And once they did, they realized that they had free will and they weren't evil anymore. They could choose to be good or evil. And so orcs are no longer just evil, but there's still that evil voice in their head that's saying, be evil, be evil. And that's what orc players want. They want that, I'm a noble orc, but... Somewhere deep inside, there's that voice that's telling me to be evil. And that's what we did with Wicked Fantasy.
Okay. As far as I know, the Wicked Fantasy is somehow connected with Pathfinders?
Yes. It was...
And it's connected with Dungeons & Dragons, and you are not really fond of Dungeons & Dragons.
It's not my favorite role-playing game.
Okay. So why Pathfinder then?
It was for Pathfinder because I went to Gen Con and met a man named Wolfgang Bauer, who runs Kobold Quarterly magazine. Okay. And I love gaming magazines. I like getting a gaming magazine and reading through it, and it's got all these different articles about different things. And so I used to collect Dragon. I worked for Shadis magazine for a while. I love gaming magazines. I told Wolf that. And we were talking, and I said, do you remember in Dragon magazine, they used to have this series of articles called The Ecology of. I don't know if this ecology, but it essentially was, let's spend a few thousand words talking about elves. Let's spend a few thousand words talking about the Mind Flayer. And it gave the races culture, and it gave them deities and all these different things. And I really liked that series a lot, much more than anything else in mechanics and things like that, because it really felt like there was something behind these races now. So I really love those. And Wolfgang was like, yeah, I really love those too. And then I came home and I thought about it, and I contacted him and said, hey, Wolf, why don't I do a series of articles like that? And Kobold Quarterly magazine was for the OGL, the Open Game License. So it had to be T20. And so I contacted a friend of mine, Jess Heinig, who did White Wolf's Mage Revised, and he did Kindred of the East, and now he's doing Star Trek Online. And I said, Jess, you really know D20. Let's get together and work on this, because it's best to know your weaknesses. And so we made those first 5 races. And then I met Jill, and she's a really big Pathfinder fan. And I said, hey, let's revisit those and put them in Pathfinder and do more, because I only had about 2,000 words to do in the magazine. But I expanded each of the race out from 2,000 words to 10,000 words and gave them more culture and more background and things like that. And Jill is a huge Pathfinder fan, so she was able to put all that together. And that's really where it came from. It came from that whole chain of events up to that.
Okay. Did you have any contact or with games by Polish authors, for example, also?
I've had a little bit of contact. I just played, as a matter of fact, a game that's almost ready. It's a Kickstarter, and it was a lot of fun. And I don't remember the name of it to save my life, and I feel really bad because I'm on camera and I don't remember it. But I will find out later. Okay. I could put it in text underneath or something. But I have seen because most of the games, the Polish games, are translated games. Mm-hmm. And I haven't had a lot of opportunity to play native Polish games. Mm-hmm. I did. It's a Wolfsong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have seen Wolfsong, and I was in the room when guys were playing it. Mm-hmm. But that's really the only one that I've seen so far. So.
What do you think about it? Does it differ in any way from other games?
The style, I want to say the voice is different, because the Polish voice is very it's very different from American. It's darker and a little grimmer, and yet at the same time, it's a little bit more romantic. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, and that's kind of my first impression. I haven't read any Polish literature, but that's my first impression of Polish literature, is that it's a little darker and a little grimmer, and yet a little bit more romantic, and that's really interesting to me.
And there is something in us Poles that we have a sense of honor, great victories, romantic spirit. There is something in us, so it is visible.
It is visible
in our games.
When the first time I visited, the joke that everyone was doing is that I designed a game called Seventh Sea, which is the fantasy Europe game, and the joke was, why is there no Poland? And I was like, I didn't know, I'm sorry. And so that whole weekend, I spent a night doing research on the internet, and I was supposed to do a seminar on the next day called something silly, why are role-playing games fun, or something like that. And it was written on the board, and I erased that, and I said, I have something special for you. And I wrote, the Republic of, is it Samartia? Samarcia. I said, wrote the Republic of Samarcia. I said, this is the country that should have been in 7th Sea, and I'm going to tell you all about it. And suddenly people took out their cell phones, and I thought, oh, they're taking notes for their 7th Sea game. And then, like 5 minutes later, another 300 people came into the room. And I realized there's people going, John is doing Polish 7th Sea! Get here right away! And so all these people showed up. And I, off the top of my head, I was like, this is what the country is like. This is the bonus that you get for, you get +1 resolve because you're a tough, hardy people because, God, look at the weather. And it's spring!
To be honest, this is not usually...
This is weird,
this
yeah,
is weird
I know.
Spring. Last year it was a bit warmer.
And I have the magic. I had the magic, and after I asked people, because they were like, I said, what would the 7th Sea magic be like? Because in 7th Sea, each of the nations has its own magic. And I did a little bit of research, and I decided the magic would be tricking devils. Because that is what is very common in Polish folk stories, is the devil shows up and you trick him in some way and get and as it would have it, tricking the devil is one of my favorite story archetypes. It's number 1 on my list of story archetypes. I know a dozen different trick the devil stories. And so what I did is I built a little magic system that was about tricking devils and getting benefits from it. And everyone's doing this, and now when I sign 7th Sea books, there's a map in the inside of the book, and I get a marker and I mark out the Republic, and I say it's official, it's in the book. So, and maybe one day I will actually write it up and actually do it. But it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about the history of your country, and I had no idea because I'm an American and we don't have history, we have nostalgia. So it's, history starts with George Washington. But so, hopefully one day I'll get a chance to do that.
That would be nice. Really.
I think so too.
Okay, you had a chance to play with Polish players or game masters here, and what do you think about them in general?
They're different all over. I have been to, they're different in the United States. If you go to different parts of the United States, game masters are different. Coming to Poland, what I found is that gaming is much more, how do I put it? It's much more personalized. Gamers in America are very reluctant to change rules. They're always very careful about it, and they're very deliberate. And if I take a 1 away here, I should add a 1 over here. And so they're very careful about it. And here it's ripping out pages. It's this doesn't fit. And so, it's and that's not a bad thing at all. I think it's a really good thing, because role-playing games are products that when you buy them, they belong to you. And people are like, John, what would you have done with this? I'm like, it doesn't matter what I think. I mean, I'm glad that you. Yes, I understand that I wrote the book. Yes, but I'm not the author anymore. When I'm done with the book and you buy it, you become the author. And at best, I'm a co-author. We write the book. We write the story together. And it's important for people to know that. And I think one of the things that Polish gamers really have a good sense of is that. Yes, John wrote this book, and yes, I like these parts, but I don't think these parts will work, so they're gone. And I'm like, fine, good, do that.
There is something in it. I can admit it because I'm a gamer myself. I play a lot. And there's something, okay, this is okay, but so let's leave it or create something on our own. And this leads to my second question, another question. In Poland, I'm not really sure if in America it's the same, we have a trend of creating our own worlds, our own games, which there is a game master and some few players, and that's it most of the times. Is it the same in America?
Sometimes. There's a bit of both. The advent of or the arrival of D&D 3rd edition, I think, did something very strange, because it was the first time in a long time that people were putting the book over the game master, telling the game master, you can't do that, that's not in the rules. And the first time that I saw that, I was really surprised. I was like, when did this start again? I remember this in the 70s, because I'm that old. But I thought we got over that in the 90s. I thought we were done with that. No, it came back. or the rules are the rules trump the game master, or the rules are greater than the game master. And so there is and even in the independent movement, which is really weird, it's more of a gaming meme than a truth. There is no independent movement. But even in the independent movement, there's a sense of the rules are more important than the players. And I've never had that attitude at all. My players are the most important thing. The rules are there to help me entertain the players. And if the rules are getting in the way, then they're getting in the way, because my players, at the end of the night should be emotionally exhausted and and laughing and happy, and damn it, can't we play 1 hour more? That's what I want, is my players to go, can't we play 1 more hour? I'm like, no, it's done. You can stew on it for another week, and then you can come
3
back.
a.m.
Yeah.
Come on.
So there are people who make their own worlds, but a lot of times there's a lot of attitude in America, I don't have any time. I don't have any time to make worlds, which is why the D&D Encounters is so popular. Do you know what that is? D&D Encounters? It's a way to play D&D where they provide you with a maybe 2-hour adventure. Maybe.
Okay.
Usually it's like an hour and a half. And you show up, you play it, and you're done, and you go home. And there's no emotional resonance, there's no investment. It's, let's kill things and go home. And so essentially all they're doing is playing Talisman. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're playing a board game. And so there's no emotional investment in the story. There is no story. There's nothing like that. And that's very popular in the United States because it's, I get it now, I get it now, I get it now, I get it now, and now I'm going to go and watch the shows that I TiVo'd or that I recorded, right? So there is a real sense of I want you to tell me what to do, which I don't like, but that's the direction that audience is going in. And so there isn't a whole lot of world building anymore. People buy worlds so they don't have to, So that's kind of the way it is.
Okay. How would you describe yourself as a game master?
Yes. I wrote a book about it.
Okay. What kind of game master are you?
I want my players to come away from a game feeling like they've had a legitimate emotional experience. Role-playing is the only literary medium where the author and the audience are the same person, except for fan fiction, but that's different. I will give you an example. I wrote a game called 30, which is about the 30 Knights Templar. I was wearing my Knights Templar shirt yesterday. About the 30 Knights Templar, and they have this huge occult spiritual experience. Because they're carrying the treasure. They're carrying the hidden Templar treasure. See, you guys are in Europe, so I don't need to explain the Knights Templar. But the climax of the adventure is they find out that they are the treasure. That there is no gold or grail or anything like that, but they are the treasure. And they have adventures in time, and they go to different places and do different things. And at one point, they arrive in modern day, and they're dressed in modern day because whenever they travel through time, they take on the semblance of where they are. And I told them, for example, you have arrived it's very cold outside, and there's all these people walking around. And they're like, okay, where are we? And they're wearing badges that say Pyrkon. And the players now are kind of going, what? And your spiritual guide is saying, there is someone we must meet. And he takes you out of the cold into a room, and there's chairs and coat couches, and there's a closed door, and he walks up to the closed door and he knocks. And when I ran 30, I had the players who were playing the knights sitting in the room with me, and like this, and I say, and he knocks, and there's a knock at that door. A real knock at that door. And for one brief moment, every single one of them believed that there were Templars on the other side of that door. For a brief moment. And that is the moment that I want. I want the moment that the players not necessarily can't tell reality from fiction, but they have a legitimate, honest, emotional reaction. And so they're like, and I say, somebody should answer the door. And so they go to the door and they open it, and honestly, there was a Knight Templar outside with the helmet and the thing and everything like that. And that one moment that they had when the door knocked and they went, okay, it's John. And they opened the door and there's a guy in the armor and everything. And one guy jumped out of his chair. He jumped out of his chair and he went, oh my God! And just had this, and I was like, I got them. I've got them exactly where I want them. And it was my friend who does historical recreation, dressed up as a Templar outside, and I had my cell phone on so he could hear me and knew when I say, and there's a knock at the door, he knocked on the door, and then he came in. And that moment, after that, my friends told me, he said, I will never ever forget the moment that, because first there's a knock at the door, and I was like, oh wow, that is so cool. That is such a neat thing that John pulled. Holy shit! It's a rip! That moment, he's like, I will never ever forget that. And that's what I want them to have. I want people to have a moment that isn't, we got 50 experience points for killing the orcs. I want them to, 50 years from now, saying, I was at the game where John had a real Templar show up at the door. That's what I want, and that's the kind of game master that I am.
So you like playing on emotions.
Oh, I do.
And I can say that you like your players to get emotional.
Yes.
So it's your favorite kind of player.
I do. I want people to be emotionally invested in the game. I want them. I have an NPC that my players hate so much. Then he's a White Wolf NPC, okay? So whenever we play White Wolf, somebody in the group takes background points in NASA, in the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, so that they have enough influence to catch him and put him on the space shuttle and shoot him into the sun. Every time we play World of Darkness, somebody goes, okay, who's buying NASA? I am. See that son of a bitch. And that's what I want. I want, I want players to. I've had that reaction. One of the players found out that an NPC who had been with them forever was really her father, and there was this incredibly powerful experience where afterwards the girl was she was in tears. She was like, I have been looking for my father all this time, and he couldn't tell me because it would have been dangerous for both of us. And then finally comes the time where he's like, I have to tell her this, that both of us may die, and now the consequences of me telling her no longer matter. And he told, and this is an NPC they played for with like a year. And after the game, she was like, I love that guy. And I was like, and he's not even real. He doesn't even exist. And I wear the hat and I wear the garb because I make play it saying that I'm a magician, because magicians make you believe in things that don't exist, that aren't real. Magician pulls a rabbit out of his hat, and you're like, I know that's a trick. But there's a moment where the little kid in you is going, that's real. That's, and I don't know how he did it. Because there's a separation of moments. There's the, there's the, whoa, that's neat. And then there's the, I wonder how he did that. And I want to prolong the, as long as possible. And that's why the game master is like a magician, because he wants to prolong that moment as long as possible.
You mentioned girls.
Yeah.
Yes. In Polish fandom, there is a huge discussion about why there are so few girls playing in fandom. Have you got any experience in a similar situation?
Oh yeah. I mean,
same?
yes. It's a touchy subject because women have been, frankly, sex objects for so long. But there's a difference between being sexy and being a sex object. And I think that, like, a lot of the women here are wearing beautiful costumes, and some of them are a little bit more revealing than others. But the fact that it's a sexy costume doesn't mean that, I should, yes, it's a sexy costume. And I'm going to say, that's beautiful. That's awesome. And tell her respectfully, that's really neat. That's really neat that you wear it. It compliments you really well, and it's really nice. And it's so delicate because the tempers are so high that it's very easy for me to, as a man, to do that incorrectly and make her feel bad or make her, So on one end, men have been treating women, like sex objects for so long. It's expected, and rightfully so, right? It's right for women to feel like, men don't treat us well, because they don't. On the other hand, it's hard to tell a woman you look sexual and attractive without sounding like a creep. Right? It's hard to do that. And I think that both of those sides have to change a little bit of their attitude or their point of view. Attitude is kind of derogatory. I don't want to use attitude. Men have to learn how to say things in a respectful way, and women have to learn how to hear it when it is said in a respectful way and not interpret it as you're a pig. And I think that because of both of those things, I think if both of those things change just a little bit, it'd make it easier for everybody. But to really answer your question, women have been treated really poorly in role-playing games, period. They're always shown in a sexual way and in a provocative way. And then men say, well, why aren't women more interested in seeing or in role-playing games? Look, we have them in chainmail bikinis.
Like, it is visible in armor, especially.
Yeah.
In kinds of armor.
But here's a really good example. I put a picture on my Facebook page of a woman in full armor, and she had beautiful red hair, and she was looking over her shoulder like this with a kind of come hither smile. Mm-hmm. And the tag on the picture was, you don't need to show your midriff to be sexy. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And I went, that's cool, because there's a really attractive woman in it. And not all of them, one of the responses was you're a sexist because she's a woman. And I was like, what? No, that's not my intention at all. And I've gotten a lot of the, you portray women sexist in your games. I'm like, you've never read any of my games. You don't know about Kochko from Legend of the Five Rings. You don't know about Bonnie McGee from Seventh Sea. You don't know about the entire country of Vadace, which is about women, which is 17th or 16th century Italy, where the women are forbidden to read. They're forbidden to learn. They're forbidden to do anything else because women are magical in Vadace. They have the power. So men make sure they don't know how to use it. So they need men to show them how. And but there are women who know how to use the magic, and they're keeping it to themselves because it has to be a secret. Because as soon as someone finds out, you're going to be not only are you going to be punished for using it without our permission. It's a real sexual, and not. I mean, it's a real gender issue in that world, in that nation. And it's something that I wrote because it's something that really exists. And that's what fantasy is for us to address real problems in a once upon a time land, so that people go, oh, it's a once upon a time land, it's not real. But it's real. It is real. And so that's why I was like, you've never read any of my books. If I'm a man and I can be vulgar at times, but it's never sincere. And when it does come out, I apologize because I am a man and, But, I think that there could be better portrayal of women. And at the same time, I think there could be better portrayal of men. Because men are portrayed like unthinking, fighting, it's the same thing, except it's different. The woman is the sex object, but which is a fantasy object, and men are treated like fantasy objects. I want to be that. It's like, I would rather be, this is a Greek reference, but the difference between Odysseus and Atlas, or Odysseus and Achilles. Achilles is the perfect man and the perfect warrior, and he's kind of dumb, right? And then there's Odysseus, who is not the perfect man, and he's small, and he's got he's dirty, and he's got a beard, but he's really damn clever. I would rather be Odysseus than Achilles, because that's a virtue that I can appreciate, as opposed to, I am the perfect specimen of malehood, which is what most male heroes are portrayed as. So I think there's a little bit of it on both sides, although, to be completely fair, it's much worse on your side.
Unfortunately. Being as a game master, is it, obviously I think there is a difference then to create a story, to create a quest for female players and male players, especially when there is the team is mixed, there are guys and a girl.
Yeah. Yes.
Does I like the word.
Okay.
The presence of a girl in a team changes anything?
Yes, it changes everything. I am a Freemason. It's kind of weird, but I'm a Freemason, and I understand why Freemasonry is only men. Because the moment a woman enters, men start competing. Yeah. It's absolutely true. And the whole point of Freemasonry is that we can get together and just be men without that coming in. And it's a celebration of being a man, and that's cool. And women should have the same thing. As a matter of fact, they do. They have their own things where they get together and be women and be women. And I think that's important for both genders to do that. And at the same and as a matter of fact, I ran a changeling game for my wife, which was all women, and it just happened that way because she said, "I want to run the game for me," and I said, "I will run any game on my shelf, and you get to invite who you want." And it so happened that the people who were available were women. So when I ran the changeling game, first everyone brought food. There was a lot of cooking. There was a lot of needlepoint and stitching and all that stuff. There was a lot of fruit and there was a lot of chocolate. And the game mainly revolved around, I don't want to say things that women do because that's not right. That's too general. But the threats were the threat against their feminine identities. I had a serial killer that was murdering. This is too game specific, but in Changeling, you have a fetch or a catch, something like that, which is the fake you, right? And when they die, they fall apart into sticks and twine and things like that. And it's what replaced you when you were taken into the fairy. And the serial killer was killing the fake them. And they're like, why is he doing this? And the killings were not sexual killings, which was confusing the police. And also when he killed them, they didn't drop into sticks, and there was a body. And they're like, that's weird and creepy, especially when they went into the morgue to see the dead body, and it's you. And that's and that was one of the things I wanted to do. It was like, because frankly, guys would look at that and go, all right, we're going to catch this son of a bitch. But women looked at it and went, that's my dead body. And they reacted very differently because I knew they would. I knew that they would react differently to that. And when they finally caught him, he was a human who was trying to become a changeling by killing the fake ones, and then he would remove parts of them and eat it because he wanted to become a changeling. And that creeped the girls out a lot. And when they caught him, he said, "Why are you mad at me? I haven't hurt anything real. They're all fake. What? I didn't kill you. I knew you were changelings. I didn't come after you. I went after the fake things." And that created that, and I thought that was going to create this, he's kind of right. And I was wrong. They were like, "No, you committed murder. You're going to pay." And the women were they're like, "No, there's no moral ambiguity here." And the story that I ran for the men, because I ran a vampire game for the men and a changeling game for the women, was all about acquiring power. Because that's what they wanted to do, because vampire is about acquiring power. But, and they played very differently. They played incredibly differently because there were no women and because there were no men. And then when I run Houses of the Blooded with women and men, women have different goals. Generally, the game is set up to reward romance and to reward drama and all those things. And so women want that. They want to play it's really funny, the character type that most women want to play, there's this English phrase for it. I don't know if it translates. It's the Dowager Duchess. Do you know this phrase? When in romance novels you have the young heroine, and she meets an older, widowed woman who is very willful, and she doesn't care about society, and I've been there and done that, sweetie, and, women want to play the Dowager Duchess because they want to be the woman whose husband has died that she loved very much and has a picture of him on her mantle, and she talks about him all the time, but she got all of his money, so now she's independent and doesn't need a man, and so she has many, many lovers. And and the game is set up to do that. And as soon as women saw that, they went, "That's the character I want to play." And so that was really neat to me. Is that a lot of women some women do want to play the younger heroine, the inexperienced heroine who's going to meet the older man who is she's going to hate at first, but then he's going to actually do something really nice, and she's going, "Oh, maybe he isn't a bad guy." So they're all walking through their own Jane Austen novel, Yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what you want to play. So, I put them in charge of that. Men want to meet, and in a romance game like that, men have their own expectations. They have their own things that they want. They want to meet the willful, wild, woman who's very powerful, who at first is not interested in him at all, but then he does something that really impresses her, and now she's paying attention to him, but it's dangerous because she is such a wild woman, and can he really trust her? And how awesome is that? That's what men want, and that's what women want, and it really works when the women are playing the character that the men want, and the men are playing the character that the women want, and there you go. So, that's how men and women are different. They have different goals, and if you can just work them into each other, it works like gravy. Yeah.
Going back to the Kickstarter, tomorrow is the finish.
Tomorrow's the last day.
That's the last day, yes. And we already know that you have reached the level when you can, people have funded the Wicked fantasy. So how do you feel?
I feel really good. The neat thing now is that we put a bunch of, when we first did it, we expected to get a certain amount. And when we got that certain amount, in 4 days, we're like, whoa, we expected to end here. And now it's gone. And we have our big last stretch goal is for a standalone Fate book. And we're only a couple $1,000s away from it. And we're 24 hours. Come on. That'd be so cool. And people are really excited about it. And we put up videos for it and everything like that. So it's been really exciting. And at times, this is the most honest thing I can say about Kickstarter, is that I see the money come in and I can't believe it's that much money. And at the very same time, my head is going, why can't it be more? Why isn't it more? And it's this weird, and I'm from, this won't make any sense to a Polish audience, but I'm from Minnesota. And Minnesota is the state of nice. We're nice people, and because like in Poland, winter is here, and winter is bigger than you, so you have to get along with your neighbors, right? So everybody in Minnesota is very kind and very generous and everything like that, and we don't talk about money. No one ever talks about money because it's kind of rude. It's weird. It's a weird thing. So when I first started doing Kickstarter with my partner Mark Diaz Truman, Mark has a business degree, and he's like, okay, but here's the spreadsheet with all the money and everything like that. And I'm going, I don't want to talk about money. And he's like, you've got to talk about money. Let's talk about the money. Here's how much money you're going to make. I'm like, that's too much. And he's like, shut up. You're going to make that much. Well, we could spread it out to the other people. No. This is how much money you're going to make, and this is how much money these people are going to make. And Mark has been a real blessing because of it, because I have no sense of business whatsoever. And Kickstarter has really showed me how, because I just release a book and hope people like it. That's my business model. But when we first did the Wilderness Kickstarter for Houses of the Blooded, Mark sent me this Excel sheet that had all of the, and if you change one number, it changes all of them. And I was like, do people think like this? I have no idea. And he's really taught me how to, I don't even know how to do it yet, but I've seen him do it, expense a book. And it's been a really great learning experience. And it's been a very humbling experience when the book costs, the book will cost 210 zlotys, and people send you. I'll do it better this way. The book costs $60, 210 zlotys, 60, and someone sends you 700. And I'm like, I hope you like it. I really do. That is such a humbling experience for someone to say, I like your books. I like your books so much, I'm going to push this much harder to see that it gets done. It's humbling. It's a lot like coming to Poland and people saying, oh, I love all your stuff. And I'm like, thank you. I just made a book I liked and hoped other people liked it, and I met a couple. I should tell the story then. I met a couple who I wrote about my divorce from my first wife, and it wasn't an angry divorce. It was a really sad divorce because we were still friends, and we were both really sad. And I wrote a blog where I said we had lunch the other day, and the look in each other's faces was this kind of, we were happy to see each other, but there's this sadness there that is never going to go away. No matter how many years pass, it's never going to go away. And his wife and they were there, and he said that I read that line, and I looked at her, and I saw that. I saw that building, and I realized that she saw that in my face too. And we sat, and he had her read that, and they sat down and talked, and he said, and it's years later, and we are still married because of that line. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna make me cry. But there are real moments like that when you write something like that communicate to people in ways that you never understood. I at the very end of the Knights of the Rose and Cross book for 7th Sea, I wrote a little thing about heroism, and I said something like, real heroes are firemen. Because, they put themselves in harm's way, and for what? It's not for the money, because they don't get paid very well, and they walk into fire, right? Oh, man. And I wrote that in the thing, and then a few years later, a guy wanted me to sign his book, and he said, by the way, I'm a fireman. Thank you. And I was like, dude, no, thank you. And I was like, every once in a while you get to write something that communicates to somebody in a way that you didn't intend, and that's what makes writing worth it.